are live. Go to the comments. Get a few hellos in so I know everything's working. I didn't get faster Wi-Fi yet, but I'm going to, but I don't have anything uploading. So it should be as bad as normal, but not extra bad. All right, I don't see anybody in here yet. I can't see if the viewers, so I just go based off of comments. I'm not seeing them yet. If you're here, say hi. There we go. Okay. It all comes in at once. Oh, some new names. Cool. All right. So first things first, today's Monday Fun Day. So we're going to be live here for an hour and a half. And then, oh, perfect. I have a question about your other website. Where would I be able to ask you about that on that website? Maybe Instagram, but I'm not sure. I don't really answer Instagram messages. But the website, which we're allowed to say the name here, OnlyFans, is where I'm going to be live at 8 p.m. I'm wearing a sexy little red two-piece, and I will be starting with that. And then usually I end up in my birthday suit amongst other things. So if you're interested in that, came here for the juicy lips. Okay, well, you will see the lips on this live, but everything else is going to be for the other live. You can go out to my beacons, jasminejafar.me, and you can find my OnlyFans there, or you can go to Jasmine, JAZMEN00. That is my OnlyFans username. So if you're interested in that, okay, never mind. Thought it was telling me. One day I'll learn technology, but that day is not today. So I was hoping my regulars would be in here because this topic is very interesting to me, and well, whoever's in here, I want to see what you guys think about it, because today we're going to discuss free will. But I kind of want to start with a little unrelated anecdote that I think is important. So if any of you come from my Instagram, was it a couple of days ago? I think it was Saturday. I posted the little thing on a little tweet that somebody posted about porn, about how porn addiction isn't a real thing that's accepted in the medical community as an actual addiction. And I got maybe a few people. Yay, Hazardston is here. I'm looking forward to this one too. I don't see King of the Hunt or Puerto Rican Paw or Drizzle yet, but hopefully they show up. But I really wanted to start with this because it was just such a good learning experience for me. So I posted that, and I did get a bunch of kind of trolls or really just uneducated responses, but I did get one from this guy. And I mean, and his original message was really combative. He's like, I think this is damaging. You're not talking about, I personally have dealt with this. And I responded to him well, I mean, I don't care what you've personally dealt with, but there's a reason that it's not recognized by the APA and the DSM-5, and here is why. And then but I could just tell that he was trying to get it on, here's what and I've said this to Hazard Stint before too. I think great things can be done discussing things with people who disagree with you, as long as you have a foundation of evidence and facts and what makes something true, or at least you can have a reasonable discussion about those things, which you can't do with most people on Instagram in particular. They're just not there cognitively. Not their fault. We'll talk about free will today. But one thing I'm trying to find is striking the balance between when it's worth responding and when it's not. It's usually not worth responding in my DMs, which is why I usually don't. To me, sometimes it's worth it in the comments, because you never know who's going to read the comments and who's going to be swayed by the comments. And interestingly enough, I have a lot of people subscribe to my OnlyFans because they're like, I just liked reading your Instagram comments. So people read them and people are swayed by them. But this guy, I mean, I started getting more combative than he was. And we were just going back and forth. And then I was like, you know what? Do you have Snapchat? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, let's do a call, because for some reason it wasn't letting me call on Instagram. And we had a really great hour and a half long discussion on it. And he admitted that like when he saw my tweet, he actually went on the person that wrote it and like didn't agree with other stuff that they said. I'm like, well, my tweet is not an endorsement of all of that. But he's like, I think it's just misleading to say porn is for sure not an addiction when, you know, there is studies. And I'm like, yeah, but those studies haven't been compelling enough for a reason. And he was saying, well, it's addictive in this way because studies have shown that then you end up seeking out more novel, extreme versions of porn. And I'm like, even though it may have addictive properties, that doesn't make it an addiction. Like we just went back, but we actually ended up having a really, really great conversation. And he conceded, like that was one thing is he conceded on points very quickly that he's like, yeah, you were right about whatever. And I feel like that's something that sometimes even I have a hard time doing because in lawyer world, you're basically taught not to do that. Even you're taught to kind of play up favorable facts and in like a debate setting, right? Or in a court setting. And it's not always, it's different than what I'm trying to do now and on my own intellectual like journey or intellectual growth journey where I'm actually trying to just get to the actual facts and use that to make an informed opinion. And not that I was doing that in this case, but anything that he was giving me, I was just like, no, here's why no. And those were all really valid reasons to not take those points as seriously. But then when he would concede on that, he's like, but I think there's a human element that and I was like, okay. And so that kind of loosened me up and we ended up having a really great conversation. So moral of the story is I learned a lot when it comes to not assuming everyone that disagrees with me online is a troll. And I knew he wasn't, which is why I even engaged in the first place because of how he spoke. And he seemed like he was more intelligent. And like, even when we talked, I was like, I'm sorry. I just assumed you were like, you know, a red-pilled manosphere. And he's like, no, not at all. I don't subscribe to any of that. And we actually had a great conversation. So moral of the story is that you can, disagreements are worth having. And as long as there's a foundation there, and it's actually the best people to have a discussion with. You can't have as fruitful of discussions with people that agree with you. So even as I was researching free will, my free will opinion was largely formed. I knew Einstein and there's some Bertrand Russell and a couple other philosophers that always they wrote about how we don't have free will, actually a lot of philosophers, but I never really dove into it. But this book, which I recommend everybody get, it is like a really short book. It is, I want to say 70 pages. And like the text is like, it's not like this, which is a much more difficult read and just more dense and difficult to understand. This is by Sam Harris, Free Will. This was like a really great book and it really got me thinking. And I watched I don't know how many of you know Daniel Dennett. Daniel Dennett disagrees with him. And I was trying to find conversations with people who don't agree with him that actually didn't agree with him and could, have a fruitful discussion. And Daniel Dennett is kind of the only one, but even him, it wasn't persuasive to me. Matt Dillahunty is another one, but Matt Dillahunty concedes that he just kind of changes the definition of free will. He doesn't say he changes it, but he's like, well, I just think this is the kind of free will people care about. I disagree. But anyways, we are going to talk about that today. I left reading books in high school. Yeah, I can tell. So this is probably not the place for you. You would probably like my OnlyFans live though. I know every time I post, I'm going live here on Instagram, I get the people that are like, oh, I thought you were going to show your tits. No, this is a way for me to kind of trick people into coming here is to post on Instagram. Oh, you think I'm intelligent. Thank you. Oh, you're in here. I told him, I was like, I'm going to talk about you in the beginning of the live. And I was going to talk about kind of like our disagreement, like some of the back and forth we had with regards to the details of it. But then I realized that it would take too much time and I actually have a lot to talk about before 8. So I didn't want to waste too much time on it because it wasn't relevant to the subject, but I'm glad you're here because it ended up once you actually, I think on the internet too, when it's just comment versus comment versus comment or message versus message, it's easier to not see it as like a human discussion, right? Like we've all heard, even people who have vehement, disagreements when it comes to politics or anything. Like when you're face to face and you're like at a grocery store, you don't like hate the person. And so it was like, as soon as we got on an actual call with each other, like it went from like 100 to like 10 for me really quickly. So hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Hi John, good to see you here. Okay guys, free will. So you guys think you chose to be here, right? You guys think that you chose from your own free volition to come join this live today. Do you guys think you could have done differently? Asking the class. I'm going to try to be, I don't know if I'm going to start teaching with the Socratic method like I did I had to be subjected to in law school, but no. Okay, so we already have some people, because this is a concept that can be very psychologically destabilizing for a lot of people. And I get it, but when we get to the end of the discussion, I'm going to talk about why it's kind of freeing. And Harris talks a lot about how it's freeing too. And the concern from, I guess, people like Daniel Dennett is you can just tell that he's just worried about the moral implications of it. And I don't think it has to be that way. And I think you can take this information and actually use it in a way to become more compassionate towards other people, to become less prideful and arrogant, and to look at the world in a different way that isn't actually damaging. I think it's actually beneficial. But I want to know what you guys think. I'm just here to see if you reply to chatters. I do, as long as they are on topic. If they're not on topic, then I don't respond. And if they're disruptive, then my moderator just bans you and you are free to join my other sexier live. So this is something that I kind of have been, if you were to travel back in the past, could you have not chosen to be here? I did choose to be here. What do you mean differently? Well, we're going to talk about it. So I'm just first going to talk about why this has always been really interesting to me. And when I was younger and before I really delved into the topic, I was already I was already on the path there. And I can tell you this because from probably like in my early 20s, I used to because I'm really obsessed with true crime and I'm obsessed with serial killers. And I remember being like, even at that age, like not really understanding how people could hate serial killers. I mean, I understood it like, oh, they kill people, they're evil. But I'm like, but they have, or like psychopaths or sociopaths. I'm like, but their brain doesn't work like your brain. And I've said it before on this stream. The idea of putting yourself in someone's shoes is a concept that like never really made sense to me. I'm like, I can put myself into your shoes, but I can't actually put myself as you into your shoes because I'm not you. And I use this example usually when people are like talking about, history and, oh, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe people did this. Or if I was in so-and-so time period, I wouldn't have had slaves. I would have single-handedly stopped the Holocaust. And you can't really play that game. And you definitely can't play that game when you're also adding in like a time machine that takes you back to a completely different time and all of that. So that was always like very clear to me. I was like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense to condemn, but I kind of had it reserved to psychopaths and like sociopaths and people that obviously have like something kind of like something abnormal. Like, okay, you like to eat people. Like, okay, that's weird. Something's probably wrong with your brain. And kind of taking the example of, and actually, if I can find it, he does a really great, it'll be in the moral responsibility section. So I'm going to read you guys, if I can find it, 4 scenarios. And we're going to talk about why they all feel, how you feel about the 4 scenarios, if I can find it. I should have gotten it before. I didn't even remember it until now. It didn't come to me until now, but it's a very short book, so I'm sure I can find it. Are we talking about, have you heard of that Korean girl that's obsessed with serial killers? She just dragged a girl and chopped her in the woods to try what it feels like. I have not heard of that girl. I am really interested right now. I found it. I am really interested right now in the Natalia whatever case. There's that new like docuseries on HBO on it. I'm only on the first episode, but it's about the girl that a family adopted from Ukraine. She was a dwarf. And she was supposed to be 6, but it turns out she's actually an adult. Kind of like the movie The Orphan, but the family's also, it's like, I don't really know. I'm still very, very new to it. Okay, I'm going to read you guys 5 different scenarios, and I want you to think about how much blame you place on the individual that did the killing, because it's all going to be about a murder. So number 1, a 4-year-old boy was playing with his father's gun and killed a young woman. The gun had been kept loaded and unsecured in a dresser drawer. Number 2, a 12-year-old boy who had been the victim of continual physical and emotional abuse took his father's gun and intentionally shot and killed a young woman because she was teasing him. Number 3, a 25-year-old man who had been the victim of continual abuse as a child intentionally shot and killed his girlfriend because she left him for another man. Number 4, a 25-year-old man who had been raised by wonderful parents and never abused intentionally shot and killed a young woman he had never met just for the fun of it. Number 5, a 25-year-old man who had been raised by wonderful parents and never abused intentionally shot and killed a young woman he had never met just for the fun of it. An MRI of the man's brain revealed a tumor the size of a golf ball in his medial prefrontal cortex, a region responsible for control of emotion and behavioral impulses. So the stream is so clear today. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, last time we had issues. So when you guys hear those 5 scenarios, you place, like, you see the first one, you're like, okay, he was like a little boy. If you're 4 years old, you don't really understand what you're doing. You're not really responsible for your actions. The other guy was 12. He's also a kid. You know, we don't place too much blame, or the blame is a little bit mitigated. It's exculpatory, you know, that he was that young and he was a victim of abuse. Number 3, okay, he was also the victim of abuse, but he was 25. Then we go number 4, which is a man who actually had never been abused and he killed a woman just for the fun of it. That's probably the one that we're like, oh my God, like he's the worst. And then number 5 is actually the same scenario, except this guy had a tumor that when we hear about it, we're like, oh, okay, the tumor is made, it takes away from his kind of responsibility, right? Well, when you understand free will the way I now understand it, kind of all of those scenarios, number 4 and 5, don't really become different. These kind of acts all seem like as if somebody had that kind of tumor in their brain. And I know that sounds crazy at first, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be great at explaining it. Again, I recommend getting this book. But first thing we have to talk about is definition, because the definition of free will matters. And if you use a different definition than the one I'm going to use, then, you know, we can come to a different conclusion. And I would say that's what compatibilists use, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm defining free will as the ability to have done differently. What that means is that if we rewind the clock to 5 minutes ago, or, you know, and I was like, hey guys, that I could have chosen to say, hey everybody, that is a definition of free will that I'm saying does not exist. And first thing we got to talk about is determinism. So if you don't know what determinism is basically the idea that all events in the universe, including decisions and actions, are causally inevitable. So it's based on, like, you know, cause and effect, which is that basically everything occurs due to prior causes, and that means that everything's kind of determined because everything just happens. And this is often used to say, like, okay, well, we don't have free will. Now, compatibilists are people who try to they accept determinism, but they try to say we still have free will, and this is really only done by type of minute. She's not only hot, she's smart. Thank you. This is usually done by changing the definition of free will to, like, oh, doing what you want, acting of your own volition. This is different than being able to have acted differently. So, you, like, as Sam Harris puts it, you can do what you decide to do, but you cannot decide what you will decide to do. I know that sounds crazy, but I hope as we get into it, we can like kind of unpack this. King of the Hunt, hello, I'm glad you're here. We're talking about free will. It's not crazy. Brains are complex and everyone's brain is different. Unfortunately, some people's brain are wired such they don't feel empathy, remorse, etc. Yes, but all of our brains are wired in a way that we had no control over, which is kind of like where this is all going. So none of us really had control over our genes or the way we behave is basically a result of our genes and the way they are played upon by our environment. And none of that is stuff that we actually have control over. We feel like we have control over it, but hopefully as I keep talking about it, you'll start to see, okay, maybe that's not true. And I would love to hear about any objections you may have, because it's actually the objections that help me make my point clearer, because it's really hard if I'm just trying to, I'm not as well articulated as that man. But I think to start with like an example, I have to respectfully disagree. Okay, perfect. Please tell me why you disagree. Maybe as I talk about it, you'll start to get where I'm going with this. So if you saw a bag of Starbursts and you were picking a color, let's say you your favorite is red, and you pick red. Why did you pick red? Yes, but why did you pick red? Because you prefer red over the other colors. Why do you prefer red over the other colors? You don't know, you just do. Well, why don't you want blue? Or what? I don't think there is blue. Why don't you want pink? Which is a good question because pink is better. You picked red because you like red and you don't really know why. What are we discussing today? Free will. And I wish you caught the beginning of the discussion, but you're still early enough that you'll be able to get it. But if let's say that, there's only one red left and somebody else, you want them to have it, so you pick something else. Whatever you end up doing in that situation, you are compelled to do by your wants. So if you don't want to pick red and you want to pick pink now just to spite me and prove that you have free will, you're also not choosing for that want to compel you to pick a different color over the one you want. You're not choosing right now, Mo, to not understand me. You just don't understand me, or you don't agree with me. Could you choose to agree with me when you disagree with me? Not really. You can't choose right now the way that you are, either my words are hitting or they're not hitting. You can't choose to right now, if right now you think I'm ugly, you can't choose to not think, you know what I mean? You can't really change. You can't choose to, I'm assuming you guys don't want to. I used this example with my moderator the other day and actually got it from Cosmic Skeptic on YouTube. But you can't choose to, I'm assuming you don't want to punch your mom in the face. Can you choose to want to punch your mom in the face? Like, so that's kind of like and how are your wants determined? By your genes, by the way those genes play out in your environment, and by prior causes and the way that those causes and kind of the circumstances are going to play out. So the idea of determinism is that if we roll back the clock, if all else being the same, if I am still the exact same, my genetic makeup is the exact same, everything in my life up to now has been the exact same, all of that for all of us, you would have, in a million times, we go back in time, you guys would have all chosen to be watching this stream. Chosen. Right? You could not have chosen differently with all else being the same. You can choose what you want, but you can only ever choose the one thing that you actually do that you actually wanted to do. Does this make sense? Not choosing is a choice. So the thesis is that free will is an illusion because there are always hidden factors in our lives that drive us to make the decisions we do. That these hidden factors are what drives you to make the decision that you do. that you are not actually making a choice. And there's like a neuro, so I'm talking about it strictly from like philosophy and logic today, but there is also neuroscience. I wrote a little bit about it. There was a study where people were hooked up, subjects, to an EEG machine to measure brain activity, and they basically, the results, the onset of cerebral activity preceded conscious intention to act. There was another one with an MRI machine where, again, that outcome of a decision can be encoded in the brain activity up to 10 seconds before it enters awareness. So that's just to say, from a neuroscience standpoint, which is all I'm going to say on neuroscience, is that by the time you decide something, you think you decided something, it's already been decided. By the time you choose to be like, oh, I'm going to watch a movie, like I'm going to pick this movie, you already picked that movie before you knew you picked it, if that makes sense. I think genes can only influence much. Environment, experience, and living shapes you more. Yes, but you have no control over how those things are going to shape you. So an example that Sam Harris uses is, okay, everybody pick a movie. You're gonna pick a movie. You're gonna close your eyes and you're gonna pick a movie. This is as free of a decision as you're ever gonna have, right? You can literally pick any movie in the world. Nobody's compelling you to pick one movie over another. You can pick any movie in the world. So everybody close your eyes and pick a movie. All right, I'm assuming everyone pick a movie. So number one, we all know that we couldn't pick movies that we never heard of or never, right? There's so many movies in the world. You can't pick something that you don't have the freedom to pick something you don't know exists. So that's number one. Number two, why didn't you, for instance, pick The Wizard of Oz? If you pick The Wizard of Oz, then maybe you have free will. But why didn't you pick The Wizard of Oz? I'm assuming we all know that movie, but it probably didn't occur to you to pick that. Why not? Could you have chosen for The Wizard of Oz to come into your head at the moment I told you to pick a movie? Can you choose what does not occur to you? Not really. And think about the movie you did pick. Why did you pick it? And you could be like, oh, because I saw it last week, well, how could you have chosen that the fact that you saw it last week is what compelled you to pick it now? Why did you watch that movie last week? Why didn't you watch a different movie? Why didn't the last movie you watched before that come into your head first? If you were choosing between two movies and you ended up picking one and the other, you can come up with a story as to why, but you didn't actually choose to pick the movie that you chose. The process of picking a movie is almost no different than if someone just whispered something into your head, the movie that you ended up choosing. So, try again. And this is something that Harris, if you don't know, is also very big on consciousness and mindfulness and stuff. So something he's really, that's one of the reasons I like the stuff with him that I really like is that stuff, like consciousness, mindfulness, free will, philosophy, the neuroscience stuff sometimes. Close your eyes again and pick a movie and see what that actually feels like. See what it feels like to pick a movie. I want you to feel what that illusion actually is like. Okay, I'm going to pick a movie. I just picked my octopus teacher because I really want to see that movie. I could not have chosen to pick a different movie. That's the movie that came to my head. And even if a different movie came to my head and I said, I'm going to pick this movie over that movie, and whatever reason I could think of for that, I didn't choose for that reason to motivate me enough to pick that over the other. Okay, let me see if people are getting this. All right. Firstly, I can talk faster and type with these, so bear with me. I would say my choices are also decided by what I want to do. Yes, I don't want to punch my mom in the face, but I can pep talk myself into punching my mom. Actually, are decided by me. No. So my choices are ultimately decided by what I want to do. Yes, but you can't control what you want to do and how those wants are going to compel you to act. So when you say, I don't want to punch my mom in the face, but I can pep talk myself into punching my mom. Yes, but you cannot ultimately control whether. So if you're trying to punch your mom in the face and that is somehow your want, you did not pick to start wanting to try that. Why couldn't you pick? Do you not get it? So, but I can pep talk myself into punching my mom. My actions are decided by me. So when you say me, what do you mean? What are you saying? Did you choose the environment that you were going to be born in? Folks don't like thinking they're not in complete control of their action, ideas, opinions, and actions, but free will is a very egocentric concept that appeals to our desire for complete autonomous individuality. Yeah, somebody actually asked Harris in a talk with Lawrence Krauss and Matt Dillahunty, so do you feel pride over anything that you do? And like he thought that was like a big gotcha question, and Sam's like, no. Like the idea that you pride in general, being so much that is not in your control goes into the success of a human being. I did not choose to have the brain that I have. I did not choose to find free will really interesting. I just do. And I did not choose to really want to and to be compelled by that want and not compelled more by a different want to share this with you guys today. I chose to pick a TV show because my free will made me pick something different. Do we create our thoughts or do our thoughts create us? So something Harris says is our intentions do not originate in consciousness. It appears in consciousness, if that makes sense. Thusly, we have less free will in the situations where you don't know what the consequences of your actions would be. So again, I'm defining free will as the ability to have done differently. Now, some people like Daniel Dennett, for instance, talks about degrees of freedom, and you can talk about it in that way. Like, okay, obviously, if you have more control over picking up your hand than making sure you're like the next heartbeat, right? That's automatic. This is something that's done of your own volition. But the argument is that this is also only done because this is the only thing that you could do based on all the prior cause and effect that got you here. And you, atom for atom, would have done the same thing every single time. If we went back in time, all else being the same, Trump would have still won in 2016, and we would have all still been in this exact place right now. You would have made the same decisions you made right now. Now, if one thing was different, if you had a different breakfast this morning, that could change things. But to say you could have done differently is to say that you could have, in a different universe, you could have done differently. To say you could have done differently is to say if you were a different person, you could have done differently. You being you in the universe that you're in, you only could do this one thing. This idea of possibility. What if all that's possible or has been possible when it comes to the past is what occurred? Everything else is a possibility that never came into existence. Why? Because of forces outside of your control compels you to behave in the exact one way that you ended up behaving, to make the exact decision you made. Doesn't mean you didn't think about other things, but why you ended up doing what you wanted to do is because of that. So I'm going to read like a little snippet of this. Intrinsically, psychopaths have the most free will of us. No, I disagree. Psychopaths have no more free will than we do. And what a big takeaway of all this for me is morality and how you behave, your circumstances in this life, and your actions in this life have to do a lot with luck. If you or I were Ted Bundy, we would have behaved like Ted Bundy, and we had his background, and we had his to say like I wouldn't have killed people if I was Ted Bundy is stupid. It's just dumb. You do not have the genetic makeup of Ted Bundy. You do not have the desire. You cannot be proud. You cannot take credit for the fact that you don't want to kill people. You can't take credit for the fact that you didn't grow up in whatever environment and the way that maybe triggered some dormant genes in that compelled him to behave that way. You and I do not get to take credit because we don't want to punch our moms. We just don't want to do it. Also, there is evidence that the human brain exists in the quantum state, double slit. Yeah, and actually the whole determinism thing. So with the quantum world, there is some evidence of some randomness, but the whole point with free will is that even if whether things are random or determined, you still don't have control over it. You don't have control over how the randomness is going to affect you. If you were to go into a store, and this is an example he uses, and you all go to a store and you're like, I want to pick up anchovies and I want to, you do everything you're supposed to do. That is you acting in accordance with your thoughts and intentions and who you are as a person. If you were to go to a store and you were to start stealing everything and knocking, carts over, you would be like, what the hell came over me? If your behavior was actually random like that would make you would be like, okay, I'm having a psychotic break. That would be so not you. You are determined. What you're going to do is determined by your genes and the way they play out in the environment. And you are you. And Ted Bundy is Ted Bundy. You don't get to take credit because you're not Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is actually unlucky that he's Ted Bundy. Let me see. I wonder if free will relates to options. If someone holds a gun to your head and says, open your safe, you have the free will not to open the safe, but there are only two options in the situation. But you still have the option to do something different. So as Cosmic Skeptic puts it, I would say listen to his, and he also did a really great talk with Rationality Rules, Stephen from Rationality. Cosmic Skeptic and Rationality Rules are great YouTube channels in general if you're interested. And if you're an atheist and you're interested in philosophy and reasoning and logic and all that, they're great channels. But Cosmic Skeptic puts it as you only ever do anything for two reasons: because you're forced to or because you want to. There is no other reason you ever do anything. And he even says, like, someone's like, well, I went to the gym and I didn't want to go to the gym, but I chose to. So I actually use my free will to choose to not do what I want. Well, no, in that situation, you made the decision to go to the gym for a reason. You want to be healthy. Your desire to want to be healthy outweighed your desire to stay home. Why did it not? Why didn't you do the other one? Oh, because I chose to. Well, you didn't choose which one actually was going to outweigh the other. So, how can I think I wrote down some other examples. So for instance, like, and sometimes you can't even choose when your wants will actually compel you to act. How many of us have been like, I want to start waking up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym, and you don't. And then one day you're like, something happens and you actually do. You don't know why you actually, this time you really wanted to go to the gym, and those other times you wanted to, but you didn't because something else. So you can't really know. So we don't always even act on our wants, and we don't know really why. So I am going to read this passage, like a little scenario that Sam Harris has in this book. It's like a page and a half. You missed the larger comment. Scroll up. Oh, sorry. Which one? Do we create our thoughts or do our thoughts create us? I don't think it has to be one or the other. Your thoughts are not you, and this goes into like the idea of subject object, which mindfulness, all of that helps with, but you do not create your thoughts. The next thought that's going to pop up in your head is going to pop up. You do not actually get to pick. And when you actually start getting more into mindfulness and all that, you realize that thoughts just arise in consciousness. You are not going to pick your next thought. Your thought's just going to come. And that thought, along with everything else I just said, is going to compel you to do something. Okay. So I'm going to read this. Let's say your life has gone off track. You used to be very motivated, inspired by your opportunities, and physically fit. But now you are lazy, easily discouraged, and overweight. How did you get this way? You might be able to tell a story about how your life unraveled, but you cannot truly account for why you let it happen. And now you want to escape the downward trend and change yourself through an act of will. You begin reading self-help books. You change your diet and join a gym. You decide to go back to school, but after 6 months of effort, you are no closer to living the life you wanted than before. The books fail to make an impact on you. Your diet and fitness regimen proved impossible to maintain, and you get bored with school and quit. Why did you encounter so many obstacles in yourself? You have no idea. You tried to change your habits, but your habits appear to be stronger than you are. Most of us know what it's like to fail in this way, and those experiences are not even slightly suggestive of freedom of will. But you woke up this morning feeling even greater resolve. Enough is enough. Now you have the will of steel. Before stepping out of bed, you had the brilliant idea for a website, and that discovery and the discovery that the domain name was available for only $10 has filled you with confidence. You are now an entrepreneur. You share the idea with several smart people, and they think it's a guarantee to make you rich. The wind is at your back, sails full. As it turns out, a friend of yours is also a close friend of Tim Ferriss, the famous lifestyle coach and fitness guru. Fitness offers to consult you about your approach to diet and exercise. You find this meeting extremely helpful, and afterwards you discover a reservoir of discipline in yourself and that you didn't know was there. Over the next 4 months, you swap 20 pounds of fat for 20 pounds of muscle. You weigh the same, but you are fully transformed. Your friends can't even believe what you have accomplished. Even your enemies begin to ask you for advice. You feel entirely different about your life, and the role that the discipline, choice, effort have played in your resurrection cannot be denied. But how can you account for your ability to make these efforts today and not a year ago? Where did this idea for a website come from? It just appeared in your mind. Did you, as a conscious agent you feel yourself to be, create it? If so, why not create the next one right now? How can you explain the effect that Tim Ferriss's advice had on you? How can you explain your ability to respond to it? If you pay attention to your inner life, you will see that the emergence of choices, efforts, and intentions is a fundamentally mysterious process. Yes, you can decide to go on a diet, and we know a lot about the variables that will enable you to stick to it, but you cannot know why you were finally able to adhere to this discipline when all your previous attempts failed. You might have a story to tell about why things were different this time around, but it would be nothing more than a post hoc description of the events you did not control. Yes, you can do what you want, but you cannot account for the fact that your wants are effective in one case and not in another. And you certainly can't choose your wants in advance. You wanted to lose weight for years. Then you really wanted to. What is the difference? Whatever it is, it's not a difference you brought into being. You are not in control of your mind because you, as a conscious agent, are only part of your mind, living at the mercy of other parts. You can do what you decide to do, but you cannot decide what you will decide to do. That's what I said in the beginning. Of course, you can create a framework in which certain decisions are more likely than others. You can, for instance, purge your house of all sweets, making it very unlikely that you will eat dessert later in the evening. But you cannot know why you were able to submit to this framework today and when you weren't yesterday. So it's not willpower. So it's not that willpower isn't important or that it is destined to be undermined by biology. Willpower is itself a biological phenomenon. You can change your life and yourself through effort and discipline, but you have whatever capacity for effort and discipline you have in this moment and not a scintilla more or less. You are either lucky in this department or you weren't, and you cannot make your own luck. Okay, let me see if comments. What's the name of the book? Free Will, Sam Harris. It's very short, super compelling. Psychopaths are prone to impulsivity and disregard for consequences. They're honestly more akin to theorists because they explore the possibility of doing something rather than considering what may happen if they do. But again, they didn't choose any of that. Quantum doesn't mean random. I didn't say it means random, but I'm saying that they have found, I don't know much about quantum physics, but I do know that there is some evidence of randomness over there. I'm not an expert on that. And so some people use that to undermine determinism. Again, I'm talking about free will, and I think whether it's random or determined, free will stays the same. I still have to disagree. There are logical fallacies in this argument, false dichotomy. Okay, explain. I would argue you were never forced to do anything. That is a good argument, JB Smith. So I actually thought of that too when I heard that, because I'm like, even in, like, if someone is like, okay, I'm going to put a gun to your head and shoot you if you don't give me your money, you don't have to do it. But I guess you have, if you do it, I guess you could argue that you had, if you're going to use Daniel Dennett's Degrees of Freedom, you could maybe use that. But what if no one has free will when using drugs or being really drunk? Things happen even though we don't make decisions anymore. They are being decided for us. What if no one has free will when using drugs or being really drunk? Things still happen even though we can't make decisions anymore. They're being decided for us. So yeah, when I guess people say, well, you decided to drink or do drugs. But again, you couldn't have really done differently. I want to talk about the moral implications. And JB Smith and I are both attorneys. So what does this really mean for, like, the justice system, for instance? I think he means when you're blacked out. So what is he saying? Like, you can't decide things when you're blacked out? I mean, sure. I don't see how that undermines the argument. Sure, I do. I went to the gym at 6 a.m. this morning. I knew you were going to be there. It's not a good argument. Sorry, that was what my moderator said. Remember, you guys can't see his. So what would free will look like? A lot like this. Well, this is the only kind of will we know. So what a lot of people think you have is not the compatibilist view of free will, which has determinism in it. And what they usually do is they redefine free will as the ability to do what you want. And like people like Matt Dillahunty say like, well, that's the only kind of free will people really care about. And no one really cares about when people say, I wish I did differently, I could have done differently. They're saying they wish they could have done differently. And a lot of people, including myself, are like, no, that's not what people are meaning. People don't know they couldn't have done differently. People sit there with so much regret because they think that if they went back in time, like it would have been a coin flip. If you were 50-50 on a decision and you go back in time, if you think that the coin flip could have gone the other way, even if everything else is the same, that is what the kind of free will you do not have. Can thought arise from what you're exposed to? Does it affect your negative thoughts if you expose yourself to negative things? So yeah, but you don't choose to expose yourself to those negative things. So you didn't decide your circumstances surrounding your birth. What did you decide when it comes to your thoughts? Where do you think you came into the equation and you control things? And like, tell me where you think that's coming from, so then we can really talk about it. Wondering if this is a live or a repeat. No, this is live. This question might sound dumb, but will us as humans ever have full control of our mind? I actually think that as technology gets better, you're going to realize that with science, they're going to tell you what you're going to do before you do it, and it's going to seem like they're controlling you. It's really creepy. I mean, we already have studies where they know what you're going to do about 10 seconds before you know what you're going to do by just being in your brain. This is like the movie Born to Kill. When you argue determinism, then you logically have to argue that people committing crimes isn't their fault. And it's true. But so I at first was like, and Sam talks about it here, the discussion between Alex and Steven on rationality rules also talks about this. At first I was like, oh my God, this changes everything. Nobody's morally culpable. Like people shouldn't go, like, what does this mean? Nobody should go to jail. But you can argue that actually things would look pretty similar to the way they do now, because practically speaking, for even just from a utilitarian perspective, deterrence and keeping dangerous people away from society, like as Sam Harris puts it, and they mentioned, we would lock up earthquakes and volcanoes if we could. We would lock up COVID would go to jail if we could send COVID to jail, even though we don't blame a virus, we don't blame a volcano, we don't blame an earthquake. If we could put them in jail, we could. They're just unlucky. But this idea of punishment, and Sam even goes, there could even be a practical reason to like that could be beneficial for society. But the idea that it's actually somebody's, like the idea we have of, oh, I hate them. They're like that anger we feel for people, which is natural. And I think if it's like your own family, obviously you're going to not be able to always be so logical and reason like this. But when you think about it, as he said, the scenarios I read out in the beginning, the brain tumor, the physical brain tumor, every decision people make, every bad decision people make becomes like that brain tumor, because they are only a result of the forces of the universe that they had no control over. This has implications even when it comes to politics. He did like a really short chapter on that. Like a lot of times conservatives really use this. Oh, I'm successful because of me. No, you do have no idea the amount. In fact, maybe I could find it and just read like the beginning of that, because I think it was towards the end. Yeah. For better or worse, dispelling the illusion of free will has political implications, because liberals and conservatives are not equally enthralled to it. Liberals tend to understand that a person can be lucky or unlucky in all matters relevant to success. Conservatives, however, often make a religious fetish of individualism. Many seem to have absolutely no awareness of how fortunate one must be to succeed at anything in life, no matter how hard one works. One must be lucky to be able to work. One must be lucky to be intelligent, physically healthy, and not bankrupt in middle age by the illness of a spouse. Consider the biography of any self-made man, and you will find that his success was entirely dependent on background conditions that he did not make and of which he was merely the beneficiary. There is not a person on earth who chose his genome or the country of his birth or the political and economic conditions that prevailed at moments crucial to his progress. And yet, living in America, one gets the distinct sense that if certain conservatives were asked why they weren't born with club feet or orphaned before the age of 5, they would not hesitate to take credit for those accomplishments. Okay, let me see what people are saying. Free will isn't truly free will. Free will is only what you can do within determinism. And what can you really do within determinism? That's the question. Like, what can you really do? Sorry, the free will. Okay. I guess I can say, yeah, I have the free will to choose vanilla over ice cream, vanilla over chocolate ice cream, but I'm choosing vanilla due to factors that I have no control over. There have been conclusive studies done on free will. People have had to press a yes or no button. You might say that they can freely choose either, right? Because they only have two choices in study, but a brain scanner could accurately predict with much more in advance what the people wanted to press in advance. Jasmine just talked about this. You can't choose to understand me, but I hope you can. Yeah, you guys have no choice right now how you're taking this information in. If it's scaring you, you didn't choose for it to be scaring you. If it's confusing you, you didn't choose for it to be confusing you. If you get it and you understand it and you're on board, you didn't choose that either. You just feel the way you feel when you're listening to me right now. You didn't choose it. I'm thinking of the danger of believing that we do not have free will, as that would negate our attempts at holding anyone responsible for their actions. The rule of law would become irrelevant because you did not decide to break it. It was determined. So either we forgive all actions, including murder, we punish everyone. So I think you probably typed this before I talked about it. No, because we still have the need for deterrence and we have the need to keep these people away. So it wouldn't be practical for our society to not. There's really practical reasons to keep things kind of like very much the same when it comes to that. But when it comes to actually punishing for the sake of punishing, I think that we would start to look at this very differently. Criminal law assesses free wills in terms of consequence. We can't look inside a person's head, so we look at internal indicators of the choices or options the defendant had and whether based on external factors, whether the defendant could have done differently. So yeah, we kind of have to, right? I mean, the Supreme Court has literally stated that like we believe in free will because if we didn't, this whole thing would collapse. And I believe that because that's what we have to do. But that is different than saying, okay, yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer is responsible for his actions, but to say that Jeffrey Dahmer could have done differently, that if we rewinded the clock and we all lived the same life and everything else was the same, that maybe if we rewinded it one more time, like one time, he would have done differently. For what reason? Whatever compelled him to act would still have compelled him to act. So I don't think it would change much, practically speaking. But for me, it's just like, I do feel more compassion for people. I see people like him as merely unlucky. I see like me and you, JB Smith, we didn't choose to be people that could succeed at law school. We didn't choose to even have whatever circumstances that compelled us to go to do that. And we have no idea how those decisions have impacted how we think and all other decisions we made. If we had chosen to become something else, could change so many decisions, right? That's what determinism is about. It's that every single thing, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. And those cause and effects are not things you had control over. What if we are all one, chose to forget with the illusion of separation and wanted to experience this? Oh, so you're saying who cares? We have this illusion of free will and it works in our society. So why does this matter? I think that's a good question. And that's what people like, I think Daniel Dennett, Matt Dillahunty are basically getting at. We don't have this kind of free will, but we do have will. Now, is it free? No, but we have will. And what does this actually do in our day-to-day lives? And even when you understand this, it's very hard to like actually go about your day and like think of everything someone's doing and be like, they didn't choose to do that. They didn't choose to do that. They didn't choose to do that. They didn't, like, but at the end of the day, understanding this could change a lot, especially when it comes to human interactions, understanding human behavior, human beings. They talk about in that video how it's going to be very hard because if religious people had that much of a fucking issue with evolution, imagine what they're going to do if they even think that they don't have, because I mean, all of religion and heaven and hell and choosing to believe is based on this illusion of free will. All right, if I accept this, are thought crimes going to be punishable? Are religious sins going to be incriminating? No, because like I said, a lot of things would stay the same. So it wouldn't our point is to make people make good choices. That's our goal. Now, people can't choose their choices, but we want to create a society and an environment where people are going to be compelled against their, even if it's not through their free will, through their will, to make better choices. So if we stop jailing criminals, more people against their will would choose to do those acts. There are people who are compelled, not because, so some people choose to commit crimes even though there are consequences. Other people choose not to commit crimes because of those consequences. There's no way we know why this person was motivated by the consequences and this person wasn't, but we want to make as many of those as possible. If the sin is murder, you can't expect to be roaming free. Some of them already think they have free will. It's all God's will. Already don't think they have free. Oh, you're talking about Calvinists, I think. Of third card, as for religious sins, it depends. So this is like to say that like as Sam puts it, for punishment, like if there's like a terrible guy who commits terrible crimes and we have a pill that they can take to cure them of that, do we not give it to them as punishment? Right? Like it becomes, we have to think about what works practically and what works for society. And yeah, maybe you're not morally culpable for your actions and you couldn't have chosen differently, but that doesn't mean that now you can be set free to harm other people. Anecdotal, but a friend of mine was behaving really selfishly and wouldn't accept responsibility for how it was negatively affecting us. A mutual friend, something that stuck with me. Some people just don't have the tools they need, or maybe they weren't ever given them, so they don't know how to use them if they were given them. I've said the same thing to you before, kind of like with some of these trolls on, like I can just tell they don't have like Jordan in here does, and I mentioned that in the beginning. Some of these people, they like, I can get angry at them. I can be like, they're so stupid. Why do they think this? Can't they like fucking go read? Can't they go research? Can't they learn how to type? Can't they learn? No, they can't. And when I really think about it, I start becoming a little bit more compassionate towards those individuals because I honestly just see them as unlucky. Maybe that's me being an asshole, but I'm like, hey, I didn't choose not only my intelligence, but the fact that I grew up also in an environment that helped me grow and build my, intelligence and develop critical thinking skills. This person didn't have that. This person is not me. This person could not have chosen to be me. This person could not have chosen to be intelligent. I'm not calling these people unintelligent in every way. I'm sure there's a multitude of ways they're far more intelligent than I am. But when it comes to logical reasoning, and again, this bar is not high. I'm talking about like Instagram trolls who are like, you're going to hell in the afterlife because you're a slut. Like, talking about those people. So I don't feel like I'm any more intelligent than anyone here. But, and again, intelligence is multifaceted. I want to put that out there. But they didn't choose to not be able to question that. They didn't choose to have a mind that is highly skeptical like my mind. They didn't choose, like when it comes to religion, from like 9 years old, I was like, this shit doesn't kind of make sense. Like, this is kind of like, who's this God fella? I mean, why does he even care? Like, why doesn't he come tell me it, like it's him? Like, why do I just have to believe him? And then as I got older and I was able to really read, I was like, okay, like I became more actually like set in my atheism through critical thinking, reasoning, skepticism, all of that, burden of proof, learning all of that. But I didn't choose for my mind to be able to receive that information and take it in and interpret it how I ended up interpreting it. I can't make myself believe in God. I've thought about it because some of the beliefs are pretty convenient. Like, I would love to believe that we're going to die and we're all going to go to this fairy tale happy land with and again, I'm not trying to disrespect anyone who believes that, but I can't make myself believe that. My head is just like, I don't believe it. And here is why. And I couldn't have made myself instead be like, no, I'm going to do this. Right. Okay. There's Calvinists who think the same. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. And I think, was it Matt Dillahunty that made a good, like, he's like, you ask Calvinists, like, why are they, and they just think, well, they don't believe in free will either. Like, I have no choice. God, But again, there's a little different because they think God is behind determinism and us atheists don't. Maybe I'm understanding the definition. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the definition. Are we talking about unconsciousness versus conscious actions? So most of the point is your conscious actions are all determined by unconscious factors that then appear in your consciousness and make you make a decision that you can't really make another decision. You can consider another decision. You may have some decisions where you can consider more than others, but what you actually choose is decided by whatever desire, intention, want compelled you to make that. And your desire, intention, want was compelled by your life, by what happened before, by what you heard from so-and-so that you didn't choose to hear, by what you know from your grandma who told you this, that you didn't choose that grandma, or for that grandma to tell you this, or for that to be a consideration you have in your head. You couldn't have chosen for it not to be in your head because it's in your head while you're making this decision. Like, you see how this really it just goes on and on and on and on and on. I think you can choose your choices, but the reason we think we can't, because it is concrete as soon as a choice is made. We ride on the thin line between the future and the past. So what are you choosing? Like, what are you choosing? What is a choice you think you made? I guess tell me a choice you think you made that you made based on obviously a desire, intention, want, and how you are responsible for that desire, intention, and want. And that came to you completely out of your own free will. That's a beautiful understanding statement from your friend. I agree. So our rules and moral values are factors that are part of our environment and then affect our actions. Example, if we did not have laws and values punishing theft, more people would be compelled to steal. Potentially, yeah. If we didn't have laws, then those laws would not be a factor that people who may be compelled to do those laws may consider and then be compelled by those laws as opposed to their desire to commit X crime. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, and we don't know why. We can't say, oh, this person it didn't work for, and this person it worked for. Again, if we look at those individual people and who they are, like someone said, a psychopath is likely to make impulsive decisions. Well, even if you're not a psychopath, there are people that are more likely to make impulsive decisions than others, and we don't know why. You didn't decide that. So Sam says we technically have free will. Sam Harris likes them from his waking up stuff, so I'm surprised he disagrees. There are people who can disagree that Harris likes, and I think a lot of times when Harris is talking to people who disagree, you usually get down to the bottom of they're just defining free will differently. Like Matt Dillahunty said, like, oh, well, if I push Sam off of a stage versus he jumps, those are different things. Sam is like, yeah, those are different things. And if you want to define free will, again, as the ability to act on your volition, then sure. But the whole point is you don't control what motivates you to act. So you're choosing, but you can really only choose based on factors that you have no control over. Watch your YouTube thing today. Those red pill guys have free will, and yet they are insane. Unfortunately, we have to apply this to them too. They're just unlucky, and we're unlucky that their lack of free will made them like that, because we have to live on this planet with them. So really, we're unlucky, they're unlucky. It's just very unfortunate that somehow the laws of the universe could create people who think like that. Yeah, I think that's more of a point of questioning our notions of free will and control over our lives. It's about understanding others on the level they're at, than expecting them to live, act, and behave in ways that make sense to us. Yeah. Expecting everyone to work with your rubric, the rubric that you did not decide, the rubric that you were born with and then placed in an environment with, and then I love when Harris in the little part I read you said you didn't decide your genes, this, and you didn't decide to go bankrupt in middle age over the illness of a spouse. It's so many things that make you the person that you are and that motivate every decision that you make. And all of those things are not things that you actually controlled. You didn't control to not go bankrupt over the illness of a spouse. You didn't control. If you like had, I don't know, what did you guys drink today? Let's say you drank coffee. Why not water? Why did you have coffee when you could have had water? Oh, well, why didn't you have why aren't you having coffee now? Because I don't want to. Well, why not? Why didn't you have coffee yesterday morning? Why didn't you want to have coffee yesterday morning? Why don't you guys want to go on a walk right now instead of listening to me? Why don't you have the will to want to go for a walk and say, no, do you? Is that freedom? Is it freedom that you're here not going for a walk because you don't want to go for a walk because of factors unbeknownst to you? Zen says free will is irrelevant because we are all one. I'm not familiar. I gotta look into that. So unconscious thoughts plus past experiences plus education equals predetermined actions. I mean, education isn't really, I would say genes, environment, prior causes. I guess if we had to, but it's so many things. It could be that if you got 5 minutes of more sleep, you wouldn't have sent an angry text to your mom today. And then you wouldn't become like, you know, it is so many little things that, but the exact, I want to say, potion, the exact recipe that made you make the decision you make is not a recipe you actually had control over. And I think, like I said, where this can be important is when we talk about one, arrogance. That's why I brought up the politics stuff. Thinking I'm better than you because I'm more successful than you, because I'm smarter than you, because I am more moral than you. That's the one that I struggle with. I'm not somebody that's like, because I knew that, you know, things like, these are immutable characteristics, but I'm like, I choose to be more moral than you. No, because I have the framework that allows me to make that decision and you don't. That allows me to make that decision, right? All right, let's see what the moderator says. So is your death essentially determined when you're born? If you don't have free will to choose the things that you would benefit / hurt your health, then you will only live as long as it was predetermined. Yeah, I believe in that. I believe in determinism. Now, I don't believe in the Calvinists. God determined it, but yeah. Now, again, what are the implications for life when it comes to something like that? I don't think there's much of it, right? I think this can help us when we're thinking about regret, like, oh, I could have known, like, you know, at the same time, you're like, that's why I've read that part to you. You're totally fine to be able to be motivated and to use certain things to make better decisions, but you only have the ability you have to do that is the ability that you have to do that, and you don't have any more. And that's based on luck at the end of the day. Hello, I was wondering if this is a live or a repeat. No, this is a live. Gotta go. Would like at some point to get into the interface between psychology and what? Let me see, make sure I didn't miss anything. We have about 20 minutes. Free will isn't black and white. It's not a constant, exists on a spectrum based on certain factors. So again, this has to do with definition. I am using the definition could have done differently. If you're going to use the definition to act on your motivations, sure, you have the free will. I agree, you have that kind of free will to do what you want. You have the free will to do what you want in this moment. But I would say you're only going to do the thing that you're going to do. And you aren't going to do anything else. And what you're going to do is determined based on things you don't have control over, including your motivations and your wants. So that's the definition I'm using. And the reason I'm using that definition is that's the definition that's what most people think they have, the libertarian sense of free will, right? So there's the compatibilist view, which is that there's determinism and free will. And that's really only possible if you redefine free will. Libertarians believe that, like, the free will most people think they have, like the one that Mo thinks he has, like, no, I am making the conscious choice to my actions. So I think I screenshotted something Harris said in his book about, like in the intro, where he said, the popular conception of free will seems to rest on two assumptions. One, that each of us could have behaved differently than we did in the past. And two, that we are the conscious source of most of our thoughts and actions in the present. As we are about to see, however, both of these assumptions are false. That's why you should read the book. Okay, I think I'm going up and down weird. Do you think we could be able to teach or give free will to computer/AI in the future? AI is a whole other thing, guys. This morning, I just was like, I don't know if you guys listen to Diary of a CEO. It's a podcast. It's a good one. He had Mo. Is it Gowda? I don't know how to say his last name. He's done an episode before on happiness. He has the book Solve for Happy. I read. He has the book Scary Smart when it comes to AI. He used to be like some high-ranking like engineer for Google or something, and it is. I mean, he was posted 4 or something days ago. Has like over 1 million views, and it's about how we fucked up with AI, and it's fucking scary. And that might be my next. I just always stayed clear of AI because I'm so not techie. So I knew I wouldn't be able to really get into the ins and out of AI. Same thing when it comes to the neuroscience part of how decisions are like to me, I'm a big philosophy person. Science and tech are not the places where I thrive. So I kind of just defer to the science. Like where if my porn opponent in here is still in here, I defer a lot of times to what science says. And I look at the studies and I try to understand them, but I'm not somebody like that's the whole thing when it came to like COVID and people were like, oh, I'm like, okay, I don't know exactly how the vaccines are going to play with each cell in my body, but I understand enough to be able, and the parts I don't understand, I defer to the experts. And that's how I feel about AI and like some science stuff. But when it comes to real world implications of AI, it's starting to freak me the fuck out. And that's what I've been thinking about. So I might dive into that. Does determinism negate the concept of infinite realities created by every decision that we make in our lives? So I don't think it negates that, but in the universe that you and I know of, in the illusion of free will that you and I have is based on this one universe, and we're not aware of these multiple universes unless you're high as fuck, right? So yeah, there is that philosophical idea of like an object in the future and in present, and you're only seeing it's like a whole thing. I believe in that, but I don't really think it. Yes, if one little thing was different in a different universe, if we were all the same, but in that universe, you had to pee at 2 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. and that you don't know that, for one part of your brain, you would have not chosen to be here today, and maybe you wouldn't have heard this, and maybe this wouldn't have it. Then next time somebody pisses you off, you wouldn't have thought it. Like, you have no idea how even this conversation is actually going to impact your future decisions. Are you Arab? No, I'm Persian. Okay. Our live. Sorry, I'm behind on comments, but I'm hoping to catch up. So I got to go, but I would say some orientations in social psychology suggest that all determinants are knowable. We just need better empirical instruments to find them. I think this is, a good topic. I knew he would have a good topic. Thank you for joining. Our lives are unbelievably complex. If you think about it, we're all millions of cells made up by trillions of atoms, none of which we chose. You did not choose a single atom in your body. Advertising strategies are literally based in humans' unconscious responses to subliminal messages. Imagine that implication in other areas of life. Yeah. So if we're going to take those 2 examples I read earlier, the guy who shot and killed the person for fun, and the guy who shot and killed the person for fun, but he had a tumor that we could see. When you understand free will, you understand that the other guy, for whatever reason, we can't understand because we're not him, and we didn't choose to not be him. We didn't choose to not shoot that person because we didn't want to. We were not compelled to. There was not whatever shit went wrong in his life, in his head, in his genome, in his whatever triggers that triggered this, we did not have. And if we rewind the clock, if he rewinds the clock a bunch of times and he doesn't have the knowledge that he has now, and like the ability to do differently doesn't mean that if you have the knowledge you have now, you would go back and do differently. It means that if you literally went back and we did it again, and all else being equal, how can you say you would have done differently? He would have never done differently as long as all else being equal. Doesn't mean we shouldn't hold him responsible for some of the reasons that I stated, but it does change how we see people and behavior, I think. These streams are so satisfying. I don't get these type of thought-provoking discussions. Yay, I'm happy to hear that. Come back Monday. What games do you play in Stream on Stitch? None at the moment, but I'm going to try for y'all eventually. Why is Alan Everson doing that? I don't know who that is. I say that it doesn't. Oh, okay. Because whether or not you have free will or not, the theory of infinite realities is based on different things happening at the same time, resulting in an infinite possibility of universes. So do you think AI has the same free will as us, just more simple? I think there's reason to believe AI is gonna be a sentient being. What is sentience? I think you guys should listen to that talk. Go to Diary of a CEO. It'll probably pop up right away. That's what I literally was like, I'm trying to sleep still. Let me play something while I sleep. And then it was like, you shouldn't even have children in the upcoming years. AI is only not a threat to us as long as it's not more intelligent than us. The second it becomes more intelligent than us, we might be fucked. I was like, oh. Free will is obviously a very strange thing to think about because obviously our actions and decisions are influenced by things that we cannot control, yet we still have the capabilities to make actual decisions, but the extent to which uncontrollable variables influence our perceived independent thought is still unknown. Sorry, is I so we do have the capabilities, the capability to make a decision is an illusion. That's kind of what the point is. So to the extent which uncontrolled variables influence our perceived independent thoughts is still unknown. So you're saying it's like a spectrum, and in some instances it's fully. I don't think that makes sense. That doesn't fall in line. It's not like, well, here my atoms were more were turned on more than it just is. Everything about you and everything that you're doing is based on prior causes, is the effect of a prior cause. Yes, in order to believe in free will, you have to argue that human consciousness is something at least partially independent from experienced reality. You can only argue that from either a religious perspective or using quantum theory, that the human brain exists in a semi-quantum state, able to make decisions outside the influence of experienced reality. So another Harris recommendation that I haven't read is that book on having no head. So I don't know, if you guys are trying to get into meditation, but you're not like woo-woo like me and you're trying to get a more scientific, like neuroscientific approach, Harris is also great for that. He has the Waking Up app, a meditation app. And for me, meditation never came easy to me because my brain is very overactive and I'm not a woo-woo person at all. So like positive affirmation, like no. But an exercise that he does is to try to get this subject-object distinction, like between you, like who is the thinker of your thoughts? It isn't really you. Thoughts are just appearing. And the book on having no head is one on my list because he talks about it. You're feeling that you have a head. You're feeling that you're thinking from here. All of that is kind of an illusion. Consciousness is really what's appearing. And so he does like a lot of exercise where it's like, look for yourself, like whatever you're seeing, hearing, like look for you. And once you get better at it, at first it's really hard. You realize that there is really no you. Now I'm getting kind of, you guys, I don't think I'm the right person to talk about this. One, because I didn't get it for a very long time. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get you guys to get it, but I get it now. And again, no woo-woo here. If you guys know me, I'm not a woo-woo person. But when you think about consciousness in that way, it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I might not be smart enough for this subject. I feel the subject is non sequitur overall. It's like you're looking for at a forest by not seeing a tree, but I'm just a former Christian third eight. I mean, look, I think you're plenty smart. But if for any reason anybody was not smart enough, that wouldn't be their choice. I don't think it has to do with that. I think there are very, very intelligent people who can have, I just think they're wrong, but I don't think they're not intelligent. Just like there are very intelligent theists. There actually might be a gene I read somewhere that makes you more likely to be religious, and I clearly don't have that. So human consciousness is something at least partially independent from experienced reality. So I would say that there's a lot of illusions that become a part of our consciousness until we pay attention to what's actually happening, and we can free ourselves of that illusion. Like the illusion that you are choosing your thoughts, like the illusion that their thoughts are you, like the illusion that you have free will. These are all illusions that I think can be actually you can discover through this practice. Have you heard of the idea that consciousness in humans is the result of an indigenous I don't even know how to say that word, retrovirus? Very cool stuff. No, sounds very cool though. Endogenous. Consciousness is a whole other thing. I would argue that the gene is called gullibility. I still have some issue with that. We all have issues with that. And again, my point in telling you this is, one, I didn't have a choice. And two, I think it's important because I think this is going to be one of those things that eventually people are it's going to take a while, but eventually it's not just going to be philosophers and neuroscientists who think this. Hopefully we can have it be more and more people, and that may change certain things, right? You may not wanting people to suffer does not make sense under this conception of free will. Wanting people to be punished in the sense of maybe going to jail, having to pay for their actions may still make sense. But wanting somebody to suffer because of actions that you understand were predicated on circumstances and forces that they have no control over no longer makes sense. What's the subtopic here? Just came in, free will. That sort of follows along with the first thought I was just having, that our thoughts are a result of the chemical reactions in our brains. So where consciousness or how consciousness originates is one of the biggest mysteries we have. And it is cured. The mystery is resolved by people who subscribe to things like religion and stuff. But again, I would say religion doesn't have any evidentiary basis, so it doesn't work. We don't really have an idea. Not matter if I decided to join this stream or it was predetermined. I learned a lot today. Thank you for that. Oh, of course. So yeah, about 7 minutes before I start taking my clothes off and against my will. But it's interesting, even thinking about my own life, like, oh my God, I chose to be an OnlyFans star, but me being me, thinking the way I think, having the life I had, having the things that were given to me, it's the only choice I really had. One of my criticisms, not from a technical standpoint, but a consequentialist standpoint, is that it makes it really difficult to promote people taking responsibility and accountability for their mistakes. Many people who believe in determinism have a victim mentality and tend to blame everyone else. Yeah, so that becomes like kind of like more into like fatalism, and I agree with you. And that is the concern that people like Daniel Dennett have, which is why, because a lot of times you'll see people who disagree with free will, and then you'll get them into like a room with Harris or somebody that agrees with it, and you realize they actually believe the same thing. They're like, yeah, you don't determine, but one, there's that to worry about, and two, okay, like you still have some kind of will, and that's the only will you should care about, because that is what makes it so that you should still take responsibility for your actions. I agree. This may present a problem, but just because it presents a problem doesn't mean it's so it's like the same argument you can make with religion. One, is it true? Two, is it beneficial? Those are separate questions. And right now I am kind of focusing on the fact that I think it's true, and two, that there are positives that I think can come out of it, but you're right in that there are also negatives that you can look at too. Would you date a guy that makes less than you, considering you make money on OnlyFans? Yes. Against your will? No. Let me say this. I'm going to take my clothes off by my own volition that I didn't choose. Consciousness is just who a body reacts to its environment. Consciousness is not how your body, that's why I really want to read on having no head, and that might be my next book. I'm actually, you guys know what I'm reading? Red Pill Ideology by Cynthia Payne, because I am going on those podcasts soon with people who think like this, and I was like, are there any good books on this? And so far this has been pretty good. I only started it yesterday. This you can read in 1 to 2 sittings. I saw that book pop up a lot recently. This one, I just was wondering if there's anything I could read to try to understand these people more, since I'm confronted with them daily. Are you still pursuing a career in law? So I'm already licensed. There's nothing more to pursue. If you're asking if I practice, my license is active, but I would say I don't practice as much because I'm doing this. Has your interview been uploaded on YouTube? What interview? Oh, the podcast appearances. So it's actually going to be later than I thought. I was supposed to go on June 13th, but the Whatever podcast, which if you saw my red pill reactions, I reacted to a lot of them. They're taking a 2-week break. They're going to start booking again at the end of June, and so I'll probably be on in July. What red pill podcast are you going on? Fresh and Fit and Whatever. So, but in other news, I may be going on Soft White Underbelly, which has been one of my, I recommend, if you guys don't watch Soft White Underbelly, go watch it. I've loved it. I started watching it before I ever knew I was going to be a sex worker, and I love Mark Leda and what he does. I actually reached out to him because I had this issue where I love what he does. If you don't know what he does, he's somebody that he's primarily based on Skid Row, which if I do this interview and I have to pull up to Skid Row, I'm going to be fucking terrified, and I'm going to hire security. I didn't, not of my own free will, but I just didn't grow up in places like that. So that's one of the reasons this channel has been amazing. And he does really in-depth interviews with a lot of prostitutes, drug addicts, pimps. He's done KKK members, hackers, inbred, this inbred family. That's some of his most popular work. And sometimes he travels. I think recently he went to Thailand and interviewed and I'm you show only one side of sex work that is usually overlaps with drug addiction, abuse, neglect, etc. And a lot of people aren't able to separate sex work inherently with the circumstances that these people are in, because sex work is obviously a spectrum and you're showing the worst part of it. And I'm and I have a cool story and I think I could, and they've got back to me. So hopefully I'll be on that one. I'm really excited. I actually wanted to be on that one. The other ones, kind of feel like I have to. So do you think they're going to try to grill you? Yeah, they're definitely going to try to grill me. Are you going to clap back? I want to, but again, so as Jordan, that's the name he has on Instagram. I don't know what name he has here. Here he's Josa. As I talked about with him, it's easy for me and him to have a discussion because we have, I would say, a basis in reality. They kind of don't. And I've never been in those settings. Even as a lawyer, when you're debating conservatives or people in the Federalist Society, they're egregious, but you agree that, for instance, anecdotal evidence isn't as strong as empirical data. That's something we all know. And Josa, even though he was using a lot of anecdotal experience, when I say that, he's yeah, you're right. But I also have these studies, right? If somebody doesn't get that, I don't know if any of you saw the exchange with Andrew Tate and Hassan, where he's trying to explain this to him. And he's no, because and then he's okay, well, does the world look flat to you? You can't just go on anything based on how it feels to you. If people don't have those kind of fundamentals, it's very hard to actually speak to them. My point is, though, I'm hoping that, I feel Destiny does a good job of this. I had no idea who the fuck these people were until I got into this. You can find people will watch that stuff, and then maybe younger, maybe a little people more prone to better arguments or critical thinking rather than those who want to do top-down reasoning and then they're really just playing for a team. They can be swayed, and you can see comment after comment under his videos you changed my mind. I used to be going down this route and now I'm not because your arguments were better. If one person can feel that way after I go on, that would be a win. All right, I do have to leave. Okay. So it is 8. I got to get on my other live. If you guys are interested, if you can try you can try to watch the full episodes. They tend to ask a lot of the same questions, so it'd be easy to have some prepared responses. I've never watched like a whole thing, but I've gone on some of them, and like, yeah, they have like a thing, and it seems like they ask like the same 7 questions like all the time. So, but like it's easy. So yeah. And a lot of the stuff they say is you don't even need to be prepared to dispute. You just need to like not be like psycho, to be honest. Okay. Live was an absolute win. Yay. Thanks for the stream. One of these days I'm going to get in on that spicy stream. Good luck with your prep. Looking forward to your discussions. Thank you everyone for joining. Next week we may be talking about AI. Let's see how much time I have to research. I actually might not have enough time because I will be traveling. I'm going to take this book though. Maybe once I finish this book, I will practice my arguments against the red pill on you guys. So thanks for streaming on Twitch. Thank you. And a big thank you to Joza for tuning in, because he slid into my DM saying that I was misleading people, blah, 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 and then we came to a conclusion and we talked things out, and I think he's great. He thinks I'm great, and he even came in my life. So that's just to show you that when somebody is able to have those fundamentals when it comes to reason and logic, you can actually build great relationships that start with disagreement. I don't think I'll be doing that with, those red pill alpha apex predator, whatever. But okay. Anyways, excited. I want to be there. What day? I don't know yet. Stay tuned on Instagram for those. But for now, I'm gonna go get naked. Bye.